Hello weirdos, welcome back to my channel. My name is EmmaAbe and today we are doing a very exciting video, and that is my rankings for the BookTube Prize for the semifinals round. First of all, I would just like to say I'm filming this the day that the announcement from Robert is coming as to what is making it to the finals. I have not watched that yet. I am very excited to see who moves on, but I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know yet. And I kind of want to film this before I watch this video. Also, I want to say it was very hard to rank these books. I felt like I got a very strong group. I think all of them were good. It was really hard to choose which ones do I think should go to the next round. Let's just get into this. If you don't know what the BookTube Prize is, the BookTube Prize is really fun. It happens every year, and essentially, as a judge, which I am, I have 2 months to read 6 books. I really lucked out this round. I only had to read 2 additional books. The other 4 I had read previously in other rounds. If you want to know more about the BookTube Prize, it's essentially a crowd-based literary prize, and I will leave the website and all of that information down in the description so you guys can find out more from Robert Ford's channel and the website and all sorts of things. It's really fun. If you think it's fun and you think you want to be a judge, please sign up to be a judge for next year. I know I will be doing it, even though my schedule will be kind of chaotic. It's really fun. All right, so let's now officially get into the rankings. We get to rank these 6 books, 1 through 6, 1 being the top, 6 in terms of the best, and 6 being the worst out of the group. And there can't be any ties. Number 6, I put The Dragons, the Giant, the Women by Way More. And I really struggled with this book in general. I thought it was, first of all, very good, very imaginative. I liked it a lot from like a literary perspective. I just don't know if it fundamentally works as a piece of nonfiction. In general, lots of people will gravitate to this that don't read a lot of nonfiction because of the way that it is written. It's more creative than I think a lot of nonfiction is typically written, which is awesome, which is great. And my biggest problems kind of come into the fact of how it is written. So let me kind of break it down for you. It's kind of separated into 3 different parts. The first part is from the perspective of Way herself, and it is from her experience escaping Liberia during one of its civil wars. She was about 5 years old at the time, so it's told in this very childlike perspective in terms of that she uses a lot of metaphors and mythology in order to kind of help understand the world that is going on around her. So instead of gunfire, she refers to the gunfire as drums. Maybe it's because I'm stupid. I don't know. I found that really hard to follow along in terms of what was happening. I think it's really interesting in terms of a piece of literature. I think that it works that way. However, as piece of nonfiction, doesn't work as well in my opinion. So there's that third, and then the middle third is kind of her experience kind of dealing with the trauma of escaping and trying to adapt to life in America. I don't really have that much feelings about that middle third. I think it's the most conventional memoir type writing out of the 3 sections. And then the very last section is from the perspective of Way-Two's mom and what her mom did to help get her sisters and her family out. The biggest thing with that piece is that it's written from her mom's perspective. So it'll be oh, my husband and my daughters, instead of from the perspective of my mom was trying to find me and her husband, my dad, and my sisters. And that I found to be extremely jarring in a piece of nonfiction. In a piece of fiction, I think it works a lot better. And I think that overall, how I feel about this book is that it kind of doesn't work super well as a piece of like nonfiction, in terms of just that, like, I had a really hard time figuring out what the heck was going on during certain parts. And typically in memoirs, you don't really do this perspective jumping, and it's not really done because your mom's story is not yours to tell, it's your mom's story to tell. And I don't know how extensively like she interviewed her mom or anything like that to make the last third. So these next 5, I really had trouble. I really struggled with putting them places. So 5, I put notes on a Silencing by Lacey Crawford. I really enjoyed this. I read this for the first round of the BookTube Prize. So if you want to see a lot more of my in-depth like thoughts on that, look at that video. But I'll kind of sum them up a little bit here. I thought it was very powerful. It was very interesting. There's some time jump things that made it a little bit confusing to follow the narrative linearly. So for instance, like we start off with the assault and then we jump back like to the beginning of her experience going into this school, and we kind of jump a lot between like different years and like the present, and that personally just made it a little bit harder for me to enjoy, but I still really enjoyed it. And I think that is kind of what put it in the number 5 spot for me. Overall, what is this book about? This book is about, it's a memoir by Lacey Crawford. It is her experience dealing with a rape that she experienced when I think she was about 14 to 16, and the disgusting things that people did to cover it up, and the medical information that was given out in just a disgusting manner. It's really well written. The next book I ranked is Our Bodies, Our Battlefields. This is by Christina Lamb. This was very difficult to read. It deals with rape and gang rape and mass rape and rape as a tool for war. It's generally like just not fun read. I do think it is an important read. Right now, when I was ranking, I kind of had to think in terms of how well did this work as like nonfiction, how well did I enjoy it? And I don't want to say I enjoyed it because it was really like hard to read. And again, I read this for the first round of the BookTube Prize. So if you want to look at that, go look at that video that I did to hear more of my specific thoughts on the book. It does work as a piece of nonfiction, but again, it kind of jumps around in terms of geographic areas, lots of jumps around in time that I think could have been made a little bit easier. But that's just me, and maybe that's due to the fact that I didn't read this with a physical copy. I read this only on audio. Anyway, so that kind of sums up my feelings on Our Bodies, Our Battlefields. It was really good, extremely hard-hitting, but trigger warnings up the wazoo. So be careful, take care of yourself. All right, so those are the 3 books that I did not want to make it to the next round. I wouldn't be upset if any of them did, because again, this group was a good group. So now we're moving on to the 3 that I thought should make it to the next round and that I ranked in my top 3. In 3rd spot, I put The Dead Are Arising by Les Payne. And this, I think, just works really well as a piece of nonfiction, because not only is it telling the story of Malcolm X, it also does a really good job of providing context to what was happening. So Les Payne takes the time to explain the history of the Nation of Islam, which I didn't know a lot about personally going into this. And it takes the time to set the scene for what race relations were like at the time, to the point where he explains a lynching in very graphic, disgusting detail. And there's a picture of it included in the book. And all of that, I think, overall just made the experience reading this book really great, in my opinion. That's just me. I did read this in the second round, so the quarterfinals, and you can go see my thoughts on that in the quarterfinals thing. So that is my feelings for The Dead Are Rising. Now moving on to my top 2 placements. The second place, I put The Address Book. Wow, in my notes, I said The Address Mask. It's not The Address Mask. It's The Address Book. But it is by Deirdre Mask. That's why I put Mask. This book, I just thoroughly enjoyed. This is kind of where I think it works really well as a piece of nonfiction, and I enjoyed it a lot. The basic idea behind The Address Book is Deirdre Mask. She explores a bunch of different places and how they deal with addressing like giving out addresses and the challenges that come across with that. A little bit of like the history of addresses and like the socioeconomic barriers that can come into effect with and without having an address. And again, I read this one for the second round, so the quarterfinals of the BookTube Prize. So if you want to find more of my specific like thoughts on this book, go look at that video. But yeah, it was just a really fun book, and I am very partial to books like that are in this genre of nonfiction. Lastly, as you can guys probably guess, the book that I ranked number 1, so my favorite out of all 6 books that I read for the BookTube Prize, is the book Cast by Isabel Wilkerson. And I had high expectations going into it, and I think they were met. Isabel Wilkerson does a really cool job contrasting race and like the levels of stratifications within class really, really well. I really liked it. What this book is about is it's looking at race relations in America, but also taking that lens and comparing it to the caste system in India, while also taking a look at the Nuremberg laws that the Nazis set up for Jews. And there's mostly like more comparing and contrasting between the caste system in India and explaining how that kind of almost maps to the caste system, or not necessarily the race relations in the United States. I thought it was really, really well put together. There's some really great arguments. I think it functions a little bit differently, but the idea of thinking of the way race relations work in America, similarly to how they work in India, at least instead of race, it's, caste stratification, to make it easier to just make it easier to understand. And I think it's one of those books that should be on everybody's reading list, and everybody should read it. It's really, really good. I don't really know what else to say about it other than go read it. What I really like about this also is that Isabel Wilkerson, she includes anecdotal stories of her own personal experiences, but also conversations and experiences that she's had comparing and contrasting, when she was talking to people in India and about how they fit into the caste system. Do I think there could have been more talk about what it is like for other races in America? Yes, as it stands that this book very much positions itself on a black versus white teeter-totter thing, comparing and contrasting, which isn't necessarily wrong, and she does acknowledge other races in there. It just could have been a little bit more defined. One of the things that really jumped out at me in this book is when she was describing the Nuremberg laws, and she talks about this multiple times, but fairly early on she talks about the Nuremberg laws and how they were formed. So Nuremberg laws are a series of laws that the Jews had to follow that were put in place by the Nazis in order to regulate Jewish movement and behavior. Oh my gosh, some of the stuff that was said about how those laws came into place were really intense. I'll give you this example. I don't have the exact quote, so I'm paraphrasing. Isabel was describing how they were going to determine how a person was Jewish or not. And at the time, we don't really do this so much now. It's a whole complicated thing. However, an African American person was described in America in the law as being African American if there was one drop of African American or a person of African descent in that person's lineage. So this is called the one drop rule. I'm sure that many people have heard of this before. So the Nazis researching it, and they saw the one drop rule, and they decided that, no, we can't touch that with a 10-foot pole because that is too intense. Long story short, the one drop rule was too intense even for the Nazis. So that should say something about the state of America in the past and still to this day. Yeah, that was really intense for me to read. So there you go. There's my rankings for the semifinals of the BookTube Prize. I'm very excited. I am going to be judging the finals round, so I'm probably going to go downstairs and watch the which books made it to the finals video. And yeah, I will see you guys next week. Comment down below what you thought of my rankings, which was your favorite book that you read for the BookTube Prize. Did you participate in the BookTube Prize, and would you be interested in participating next year? Stay safe, everybody. Get vaccinated. The Delta variant is no joke. I will see you later. Bye.